you know. Such a pretty smile, I want to see it once in a while. But you were right for me. You were right for me.
Okay, it's time for Real Raw Recovery. I'm Joe Tilley.
Tyler Tilley.
All right, so let's get things started with a moment of silence and the Serenity Prayer, the Serenity We Prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and wisdom to know the difference. I think you're up with the reading.
Nice of you to share for one. I had a quick, I didn't read through it all, but I got a quick glimpse of today's reading.
Yeah.
And I think it should be an interesting dialogue generator.
Oh, yeah. I think you're right.
Okay,
You're
so
right.
AA is not a cure-all. It would be a product of false pride to claim that AA is a cure-all even for alcoholism, as Bill sees it, page 285.
Mm-hmm.
In my early years of sobriety, I was full of pride, thinking that AA was the only source of treatment for a good and happy life. It was certainly the basic ingredient for my sobriety, and even today, with over 12 years in the program, I'm very involved in meetings, sponsorship, and service. During the first 4 years of my recovery, I found it necessary to seek professional help since my emotional health was extremely poor. There are those folks too who have found sobriety and happiness in other organizations. AA taught me that I had a choice. I could go to any lengths to enhance my sobriety. AA may not be a cure-all for everything, but it is the center of my sober living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of food for thought there. Yeah, I guess if I'm going to come into a 12-step program, and if I got a problem with drugs or alcohol, whatever, I come into a 12-step program, and I decide to jump in with both feet and do this, do the program recovery the way it's outlined. If I do that, I believe that I've got a real good chance of making it if I'm willing to buy in completely and do the whole thing, right? Do the deal. And that's what the people who wrote the book, the original members of AA, they were all about that, and their success rate seemed to be very, very high. So, but I don't think I should be, I don't think I should turn down outside help when I need it. That's for sure. And I've had outside help along the way, therapy, marriage therapy, friends who were outside the fellowship, doctors, things like that. People have helped me along the way in, various aspects of my life. And so I guess, to think that AA or any 12-step program is the cure-all to everything, I don't think that's, I think we should take advantage of the help that's out there, because I know for me, it really helped me therapy really helped me to get to the real core of my biggest problem, which I believe to be my biggest problem, which was my fear of abandonment, which seemed to seep into just about every aspect of my life. And when I was able to get to that core of my fear of abandonment, it helped me to, help me with my program of recovery, but it helped me in just about every aspect of my life. I think it helped to make me more of a whole person. And so I think that it would be arrogant for AA as a whole or any other 12-step program to say that we are the cure-all for everything. I mean, certainly if it wasn't for recovery, I wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't be in a position where I'd even seek help, to be honest with you. So, seek outside help. So certainly it's a great place to start, no doubt about that. But to assume that it's the end all and be all is, maybe that would be an arrogant statement. That's kind of what I got out of the reading today.
How often do you think outside the box?
Oh, depends. Where's the box?
In your daily life?
I don't know. I mean,
because like I would categorize you as AA is the end all be all.
Yeah, would you?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm the end all and be all.
Yeah.
Okay. What does that look like? I don't know what that means.
Kind of like eat, sleep, breathe it.
Well, okay, so stuff that's related to it, yeah, I would say I'm pretty heavily involved. Okay, now that I'm retired, I still have my social media stuff that I do.
Right.
And that kind of thing. But really, now that I'm retired, it certainly it has maybe taken more of a larger focus in my life. I'm spending more time involved with AA.
And that's because you like it.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's because you love it.
Right. That's because I love it, because it's changed my life. And I find that when I connect myself to recovery, the program recovery and the people around it, when I dedicate my time and my resources to that,
mm-hmm.
I find that I feel better. So it tends to work for me. So
right.
Why wouldn't I continue to do that?
Right.
There's no upside to for me. There's no upside to not being involved in a big way.
Right. I guess just for me, when I read that, it's not so much like I'm trying to cure things all the time, because even Bill wrote this at 12 years sobriety, and I personally have 18 years of sobriety. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's not I can't remember the last time. Well, I shouldn't phrase it like that. On a regular basis, I'm not in search of a cure. So like, for even to use the words like cure all, and like, okay, going outside of the program for a cure. Like, no, I'm not even talking about going outside for a cure, but I'm just going outside for a different perspective, some outside influence, some different, like eating at the same restaurant, if you know what I mean? And like, let's try a different restaurant for a while, and or sometimes, and not just because it's boring, not to say that at all. I don't really find AA boring. I would never claim that, but I would find it monotonous or close-minded, and a little bit of it's funny because I was going to say between us, but we're recording this, but like cultish, and and a little bit like closed-minded. And so I think when I feel like that, that's probably my perspective, and that's the certain individuals I happen to correspond with. And so I just sometimes I really like breaths of fresh air in different circumstances, and especially I get a kick out of people who actually have been sober a long time, but I like to see what they're doing. So I'm curious about people who are a little like who are remain sober and from what I gather seem to be pretty open about that element of their life, but their world, either on a professional level or on a creative level, like I'm curious what they do with their life in sobriety. And that's been a reoccurring theme for me and you, like from my angle is like, okay, what do you like, what have you received this gift, and it's the greatest gift you will receive, because it's such a beautiful format for life and a path, like a design for living. And then so like I want to read about the life you like the book you wrote after you found sobriety. And I find that so like I don't think I stray too far away, but I do like to like go outside, or again the metaphor of trying different restaurants and different scenes, and how do people interact, and who are people really when because I remember like you would hear often, and I believe this to be true, like people are, not everyone, but there's a lot of people that are one way in a meeting and another way outside of it. Like there's kind of like who I am in this instance and then who I really am. Mm-hmm. And I would get that a lot, and I would hear that a lot in early recovery, like go out for lunch with a guy and see how he treats the waiter, because he talks a good game in the meeting,
right?
And so it's kind of like that kind of element, like okay, so if you've been given a beautiful gift of recovery, and you're never immune from the obsessive compulsive disease, but if it's in remission, like how are you behaving? What are you doing on a daily basis? How do you regulate? And it wasn't to be I don't want to confuse you by earlier saying like it's your end all be all, because at the end I end up agreeing like how beautiful is it that like we can both admit like yeah you're involved so heavily because you love it, and it pays off in dividends for you. So I would never I'll question it, but I don't think it's a negative at all. Mm-hmm. But I was just, so when I read this, I'll sum it up by saying when I read this, it was like, okay, I'm not really looking for cures necessarily, but I am looking for different perspectives and different outlooks. And I really love, I had a phrase which I can break down if it doesn't make sense, but I love fucking with talent. Like when I see other people who are really talented at something, I really am inspired by that, and I really get off on that. And like, it's the same thing as when you hear an amazing speaker and that's articulate and thought out and really a really good spinner of words, and I'm really compelled to go say hello and thank you and maybe have a moment with them, because I really enjoy their ability to convey a message. And yeah, and then that kind of that doesn't just stop there. I've seen other people, whether it's artists or other athletes or intellectuals or people who are very charismatic, like and the way that they thrust themselves into the world. Like I really enjoy people that are talented in those kind of areas, and I'm engaged by them, and I want to know their perspective, whether they're sober or not. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like that wouldn't be an underlining issue for me one way or another. Often I meet a lot of wonderful people that happen to be sober, so I might kind of keep an extra pair of eyes on them. Like I listen to other radio show hosts and podcast hosts that happen to choose our same way of life. So I'm curious, okay, what are they doing? How are they interacting with the world? What are they doing with their gift? And some of the people that I follow, like, I are absolute nutcases, and I get inspired by that because it's kind of like nothing holds them back. They still have no, like, they have no inhibition. And I'm not saying I want to mimic that, but I find it interesting, and I some of them are very hysterically funny, and then there's other people that are very grounded that's also inspired, like, or that people aren't wishy-washy. I find those people also to be very, and they don't all come from just stemming from the rooms. So I get a lot out of certain people that are talented in various ways, and their perspectives are very vital for me, because I can't count on getting all of that information or all that talent in one basement or in one format. And so I think for me, it's really important to look outside the box, like, who's flourishing, how are they flourishing, and how can I steal from them, or how can I engage with them, or how can I take away something from their standard or their way of living. And that's happened for like the last, I just throwing out there, 5-7 years, where I just really engage with people that are like doing really well, and often it's nothing to do with whether they're sober or not. And then prior to that, it would all be based on whether they're sober or not. Like, okay, if they're sober, now they have the same foundation as me. Now what are they doing? Okay, so I'm gonna kind of mimic that and follow their lead. Now I have the ability to put that by the wayside, and just because they're not sober doesn't mean I can't get something from them. So that's how I looked at the reading, where it's like, I need as much different perspective as possible, because I trust myself and I trust my decisions. Like, at the end of the day, if I'm interacting with somebody who isn't sober, and the tide turns and they, like, I have my boundaries, and I have my, like, what's sacred to me and what's valuable to me. And that's not going to just kind of get washed aside because I'm talking to somebody who's really engaging, and then they start questioning my way of life. I'm not worried about that. I've already gone through those experiences where I've engaged with friends or other people that start questioning my way of life, and I've learned how to hold like a firm ground on that. And I remember, I'm going to continue, okay?
Yeah.
I remember one of my first experiences, I was at a party. It was I don't think it was a shit show, but I was definitely at a party where there was alcohol being, and I was definitely younger. I want to throw out, like, 3 or 4 years in, and it might have been something to do with college. So, like, it was kind of like an experience, to say the least. So I got 3 or 4 years sobriety. I go to a college party because I'm in college and I'm sober, which was crazy enough as it was. And I decided to go out with some friends, colleagues, or people from school. And I remember I was probably drinking orange juice or something. It's kind of actually a pretty strong memory still. And I said, the girl said, hey, like, what are you drinking? Or end up saying, like, why don't you drink? And I said, or I said, I don't drink. And she goes, oh, like I was a little puppy with 3 legs. And I remember I had no comeback. I had nothing to say to that. I was completely like, Jesus Christ. And it was definitely humiliating. I was off my game. I wasn't in my natural environment. My natural environment at that time was in church basements. Now I'm at a college party where there's drinking. And she said, you don't drink? Oh, like I was literally a cancer patient with like weeks to live. And I'll never forget that, because I actually, at that time, I was pretty stable mentally, and where I was, and as a man, I had grown a lot. And at that point in my sobriety and in my life. And so I wasn't really like, I remember I wasn't even that offended, but inside, it definitely stuck with me. But now today is like, I remember I went through a phase where I had a little bit of not animosity and not resentment, but a little bit of ego in people that did drink. So, and maybe even a lot, but like, so if you were so if you offered me a drink, I would be like, nah, I'll stick with my orange juice. Thanks, pig. Like, like I had kind of the opposite answer, and like, kind of like, you don't know who you're talking to. Shut the fuck up, and go get me a cranberry and soda. Snap, snap. Like, kind of like a little bit of force with fear, and it's kind of the same attitude you'd have if you were drinking, right? But I was kind of teetering on the other side because I don't want to hear an "aww." So you're not gonna get a chance to say "ah." In fact, you're gonna be afraid, and your hand's gonna be shaking as you put my drink down on the table because you're afraid of what I'm gonna do. And then, so having that experience was really good for me because I realized that that's not the angle I want. The angle I want is to be funny, charismatic, and I want people to think I'm a good person because I'm a good person. So depending on the situation, as long as everyone's like kind of not off the rocker, I'll be able to, I don't know, I'm good with or they don't even ask because like it doesn't even come up. Like, so there's really not a lot of opportunity for me to get inspected, or like I now it's not a really big issue. So I just kind of come up with, if someone says, hey, you want to drink? I'm like, oh no, not like, I'll even say like, not tonight, or oh, it's not for, oh, I'm really good with this. Like, I don't create, and I'm really confident with some of those answers. And then the new evolution is being in a foreign country is, I remember drinking here is like medicine. So, right. And it's also like code, and it's also like honor, and it's also like, how dare you cheers with water and you spit on our name? How dare you spit on our name with your water or Coca-Cola? Mm-hmm. So another level of like, and you don't understand our culture, and how dare you, like, you only drink water. This is, at this point in time, you either drink or you leave. Like, that quite extreme feelings I've felt. And I've had to come up with where I go, oh, I'm sorry, I'm taking medication and I can't drink on the medication. Oh, right. Welcome back.
Yeah, I've had people try to shame me into drinking, you know, yeah. And what I understand it to be is, it's always the source. Because if that person has issues with people not drinking, it's not the people who aren't drinking that are the problem, right? It's like, it's not the people who aren't drinking. I mean, I've been in situations where, you know, quite often I'll say something like, a friend of my buddy Paul used to always say, somebody ask him if he had a drink. He'd say, no, thanks, I have to be home for Christmas. And I use that line a lot. Mm-hmm. And people say, you know, they look at me confused, but it doesn't matter, because anybody, like, quite often they'll say, oh, okay, I get it. Or they don't get it, but it doesn't matter. And it's like, somebody recently asked me to salute, like to cheer, to, you know, and I held up my water glass, and they said, no, not with water, it's bad luck. And I said, okay. So I just stayed out of it. Right. Because I wasn't going to say, oh, I see. Okay. So I have to cheer with wine because it's otherwise it's bad luck. Well, you know what? It's bad luck. It's going to have to be bad luck. Right. You know, I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. Curse your wedding and your family.
Right. So what I have to, you know, when I think about myself, you know, prior to recovery and where I came from, I remember that one of the problems that I had, I couldn't understand, especially like early in my say drinking career, I could not understand why people didn't drink, because what alcohol did for me, I made the assumption that it did that for everybody else.
Hmm.
And I thought to myself, well, so I've got this fear and all these, there's these character defects that I'm aware of, but like the fear and the sadness, other things going on in my head that I'm aware of. But when I drink, those things all go away, and I'm happy. At least that's what I believe. At least,
Hmm.
after a while, I'm not happy anymore. But the liar continues to tell me that I have to do this to be happy. But so I think that, why would you not want to drink? What the hell's wrong with you? And I used to think there was actually something wrong with people that didn't drink, because they either couldn't handle their booze, and something happened to their minds that caused them to break down in some strange way. They just couldn't handle it. And I thought, that must be what it is, because to me it's this freeing magical elixir that makes everything good.
Right.
So why would you not want that? So I couldn't understand. So I mean, I can see why the girl would go, ah, because I would be, you can't drink? Oh, too bad for you. And that's because that's the way my mind worked, and I couldn't understand another way of looking at it.
What are you going to do all night?
Yeah, what are you going to do? You going to stand there and drink like water and cranberry soda with how you going to? How's that going to work?
Right.
And then reality is, at the end of the night, these people are mindless. Some of them have been in fights, and some of them have been crying, and some of them have been, getting in car accidents, and some of them are doing, all these horrible, shitty things happen to them. But, you go into with this idea that it's going to be fun. And that's, that's the nature of the disease for me, is like this idea that it's fun, even when it's not fun. I just don't believe I can have fun without it. And then, of course, I learned in recovery that that's not the case, and that's not even remotely the case. But it just, because I have this liar in my head that tells me differently, and I keep listening to the liar, the thought of trying to get by without booze was a scary concept. But there's something we talked about earlier that it had to do with the reading. And you mentioned something about well, it had something to do with it. To me it sparked this idea of hypocrisy, right? People not being genuine, and how I hated hypocrites, right? How I disliked hypocrites, but yet was a hypocrite myself. And like how, their AA is, you might find it cultish, or recovery 12-step programs, you might find them cultish. And I think what happened, what got me to thinking about that is, yes, if I'm in a critical state of mind, I criticize everybody and everything, and I look for what's wrong with it. It's kind of like, say Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad, like maybe they were all really close to perfection, right? And yet they still had certain character flaws. But I think the motive behind who these great teachers were may have been like a perfect motive, and the guidance may have been perfect guidance, but the problem was in the execution of the following, and our humanness, because we get caught up. I mean, so maybe say, for example, AA, all 12-step programs are perfect in theory. They're perfect, but the following is not, like, okay, because our humanness gets involved. And so maybe so I, and as a member of this human race, I do have a tendency to judge and look for character and look for flaws in others. And I find that I have found that the flaws that I have, I can really see them in others. They become more apparent to me in others because those are character defects that I have, and those are the ones that I tend to get stuck on the most. So, so that's what I think is a problem. I don't think maybe, and I don't. I'm just putting it out there, is that maybe the 12-step recovery programs are perfect in theory and flawless in theory, but my problem is in the following, right? And really doing exactly what it does. And I mean, I don't even know if that's a truth or even my truth, but maybe the teachings of Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad and others was perfect in theory, and the concepts were perfect, but it's just in the following or the that we're in the humanness that therein lies the problem, right? So that's what that was sort of going through my head in when you were talking earlier, and I guess that has to do with the reading, in that it's not the end all and be all, but there is a lot of maybe it's perfect in theory, but it's just the following of it is not. And there are other ways for us to get help to become whole people, so that we can maybe even follow it better.
Well, remember, so one of the huge things that kind of can get overlooked or touched on very briefly is the power of hope. Like when you have hope, you have the ability it creates motivation, and motivation then contributes to willingness, and that willingness then will get your ass to the meeting. What I'm saying is a bunch of things. I indicate that in many ways I would be on the same train of thought with you, with saying if you use it as a design for living, it's pretty spectacular. What I'm saying is the same monotony or radicalism, or as I refer to as cultish, is like, okay, if that just starts to get a little sour or a little worn down, then I look elsewhere for inspiration / hope, so that I can get the motivation and willingness to continue on my journey. And so sometimes I'm not going to find all that hope and inspiration and excitement in the rooms. And consequently, sometimes my motivation has been like, oh, I really think this is offside in this particular meeting, even, let's say, like, not even generalizing it, but that created motivation to hear, like, okay, what do other people think about this situation that someone brought up outside of the realm and the teachings of AA. And then now I have more than one perspective, and then I make my column the way I'm going to go with that now. So it's like, I don't think that, like, I'm not one of those people that say all the answers are in the book. They're not, for me. Mm-hmm. And so like, that's not one of, like, you'll never hear that phrase. There's a lot of answers, and there's been a lot of, and again, it's almost like sometimes I don't like having to say what I'm saying right now. AA saved my life, then gave me a life. What my life's like today, 18 years later, is very different than 6 years or 12 years ago. So I do like saying that. I'm going to pedal back a little bit. I do enjoy saying that because I never want to lose sight of that. But I'm not trying to bash the program in a way that's harmful. I'm just trying to offer my perspective today, not 7 months ago, not 18 years ago, but today. And my perspective is like, I need outside influence. I need inspiration from outside. I need inspiration from inside. I love when you catch a guy who's got 7-8 years, who's just on the beam and crushing life because he's gotten over that hurdle, which is, I would say, is a landmark of like 5 years. Most people don't make it. And once you crush that 5-year marker, all of a sudden you know who you are and you know what mission you're on. And I really believe in that logic. It's just, for me, it's mathematics. Like, you know who you are and you know where you're going and you know what you're doing and you know how you got here. Like, I just love that. And so I think that's, like, I've said this time and time again, that my message is, because if I'm going to throw out a figure, I could be way off or bang on, but if 80% don't get to 5 years, then my message is for those people after 5 years, because 80% of you never made it. So now what's life like after the 5-year marker? What the fuck happens? Bill's writing a book at 12 years. Like, yeah, like, what's happening? Bill's reflecting on the boom that he created. And like, yeah, like, you can have that boom too. Like, you need that boom. What did you do with what are you doing with your life, your sobriety, your miracle, your gift? What's happened? Because if most people don't make it past 5 years, and that's a key indicator whether you're going to stick with it or not. There's a lot of outliners and there's a lot of people that stories would say otherwise, but there's the most people that get over 5 years make it. So if you just look at statistics. So let's talk about that. Let's not run away from that. I don't want to run away. So now that these people that actually made it, that are still talking the talk and walking the walk past the 5-year marker, got their medallion, and now what is their life like? Yes, because that's the most important part, because it takes probably 5 years to start fucking fixing your broken self. And then once you start putting the man back together and the world comes together, what are you doing with that gift? And for me, I've learned is that there's a lot of amazing people on this planet. And after getting my medicine in the rooms of recovery, it's fun to look elsewhere. And like, that's when it comes back to the reading. And I'm not just saying, I'm a huge advocate for the program and I need a steady quota of meetings. I don't just say, oh, it's a cult, so I'm never going again. No, but I'm willing to at least say it, talk to you about it, talk to other people I trust about it, my counsel, and see where I'm wrong, see where I'm right, and then just kind of go, yeah, you know, like, it doesn't really affect me. I can call it what it is, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to cling on to that or hang on to it and let it ruin my sobriety. But there are certain things when people are radical, whether it's in religion or in the program, it can come across as unbalanced. And I like balance. I'm a huge advocate for balance and using the tools that you have grown, using the person that you are to build your life. Like, it's so funny that Bill wrote this at 12 years. It's amazing. Like, he felt so compelled to really reevaluate what happened, the boom that happened. And that's amazing to me. And then, because it's amazing to me, not without any pride, but like, yeah, I got 6 more years that he has than when he wrote that book. So it's like, man, the fellowship has grown. Man, the program has grown. Like, the people that make it past 5 years are going to make it, like, chances are, because that's like, you committed. You committed. You said, I'm going to walk this line. And then once you get past that, you can really see your faults and see where you need to grow. And then you build off of that, and then you create a wonderful life. And then 12 years later, on top of that, now you need to start looking like, okay, how can I continue to grow? And then I think the most important for me to remember is that make sure all this growing I'm supposedly doing, I give it back to the people in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to, that's a balancing.
Well, I think, you know, you were talking about, you know, inspiration earlier on, and like, you know, if I was inspired last night listening to a guy with 9 months, a young kid who with 9 months speak, and he was talking about, you know, this kid he's 9 months, but he's done the work, you know, he's clearly, and he's in an amazing place. And and that's inspired. And I guess if you go to where the root of inspired is, it's in spirit. It's like having the spirit within, and it's like people who have that spirit within are I'm inspired by people who are inspired. You know, like you talk about like athletes who have done incredible things, like those they're inspiring. Artists who've done amazing things are inspiring. Writers who've done amazing things are inspiring. You know, people who are changers in the world are inspiring because you know, they are inspired. So they are inspired to work at whatever it is they work at, and to become successful, and to be able to you know, to share that inspiration with the world. And I can get really turned on by that, right? It's really, it's nice to be around. It's great to be around people who are inspired because they inspire me. And I guess if you look at the work of the root of inspired, it's have the spirit within. It's to have that spirit within. And whatever that spirit is, it's what drives us to be better. And yeah, so I mean, just so listening to the guy, even he's got 9 months, which doesn't seem like a lot of time. It's not the 5-year level you're talking about, but it's inspiring. And I heard a lot of amazing things from him. And you know, in my almost 27 years in recovery, I've grown a lot, and I've learned a lot, and I'm not the same person I was, you know, you touched on that, like 10, 12, 15, 20 years ago. I'm not the same person I was. And yeah, but if you had asked me at those, you know, those points in my recovery, I would have told you that it's good. I'm in a good place. And I can't imagine how I'm going to be able to grow from here, but yet I have, right? I can't imagine how I'm going to be able to change from here, but yet I have. And but then, you know, I also have to realize that sometimes I take a few steps back. It's like my character defects, you know. I can see that I'm being obsessive and compulsive, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that obsessive and compulsive person. I find it very difficult to stop, but I mean, at least I have some awareness, right, of that. And you know, I'd like to be I'm working at being a little bit more open-minded. I'm certainly way more open-minded than I used to be, but I'm working on being a little bit more open-minded, a little less obsessive and compulsive. And you know, I guess I probably will always be working on those things. But I have some awareness. My the group that I'm with, that we do our the nightly inventory, we're reading Drop the Rock now, which is it's a great book. And yeah, it's just making me, and I guess that's why I'm so aware of my character defects at this stage. But and why it's kind of like it's a mission of mine to start to make that better. Just because that's where, you know, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is.
So while you were talking, I was just making sure what I'm about to say is coming from a place of love and but honesty. And I think as the term comes, I think it makes for good TV. Shall we?
Okay, sure.
So, and feel free to question any of my logic, or even feel free to be combative or whatever. So I believe that because I am who I am today and where I'm at today, I've learned that making judgment calls and stereotyping and profiling and experience combined into one, I would say, and it makes it even better because I don't know the individual you're talking about with 9 months. Mm-hmm. So it makes it a lot cleaner because there's no, like, so if so this is what I was thinking when you're telling me. So you gathered inspiration from him he's in a good spot. Is it good that he's sober? Absolutely. Is it he just got a 9-month bonus on his life, let's imagine. So there's nothing but good. I'm just prefacing by saying that there's nothing but good that what he's doing. Now, let's add the rest of my spin on it is that you kind of brought it all full circle, because I mentioned this a couple weeks ago and I spoke a couple weeks ago and I said the same thing, is that, which was a little, as I reviewed it again, what I said I can rephrase it a little bit better so it's cleaner, but essentially it was on the lines of like, you don't really even know who you are until the chips are down. And I'm not benchmarking and I'm just hung up on this 5-year marker. It's just, it's one of the key pieces of evidence, whether you're going to make it or not. And so what I would say, one, I would really like to bookmark this podcast and see where this kid is in 24 months. So not even, he'll get to his 1 year. So this is where I'm making the judgment call, profiling, and based on my evidence being in the program for as long as I have. He'll get to his 1 year because that's a celebration, and that hope and motivation will be beautiful. After about 14 months, he'll start thinking about what he's going to do with his life. He'll start going down that path. It'll revolve around his influences, people that his sponsor, and people that tell him what, like, you know, guide him in his next phase of his development. And then the chips will hit. This life will start to actually unfold. He'll find out who he really is and who he is really not. The chips will land, and chances are he'll run, or chances are he'll cower, or chances are he'll just say fuck it, not worth it. And that's the hardcore reality. And that's the reality. He doesn't know who the fuck he is. He can sputter out like how wonderful 9 months is, because of course it's a lot better than what it once was. But how long are you going to take that? How far are you going to take that? How long are you really going to go? How much trudging are you willing to do? And most people are not. And unfortunately, I'm guessing in within the next 36 months, it's like, no, he fell off the face of the fucking planet. No matter how much work he's done now, doesn't mean anything in 12 months. And so that is just the stark reality. And so now I go, okay, that sounds cynical and pessimistic. So let me combine that with where I said I want to speak from a place of love. I just think you need to be aware of that's what the reality is, so that you can really prepare yourself for the fucking truth and know who you really are when the chips are down. When shit hits the fan, death, relationships, you hear always the same shit, like this happened, then this happens. I got a job that keeps me busy. He started working out too much. He found church. You hear all these different path choices that these guys make, these women make, and they fall off the face of the planet. And it's just the way it is. And that's just the fucking reality. So fine, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. And so again, so you say, well, if you're being so cynical and so pessimistic, and he doesn't know who, and I'm really grilling this kid. Again, it's so much better because I don't know him. All I'm saying is, now that you've heard my influence and my experience, use that because you're not going to fucking make it. Right now you're hopeful. Right now life is grand. Right now everything's good. Wait till that boat sinks.
Okay, so I want to say this though. Okay, like if you take that attitude, right? You take that attitude. If you look at the first 100, that wrote the big book, a very large percentage of them, heavy duty, low bottom drunks. And a very large percentage of those guys died sober. Why is that? What did they do that was different from what people do today? Other than, I mean, certainly, like they all worked the program. They all did the steps, and they all, that was a prerequisite for coming into the program, is they actually had to do the checklist inventory and start making amends before they even allowed to go to meetings in some places. And so they were all, right into the steps right off the get-go. What happened that such a large percentage of the original members stayed sober, and such a large percentage of the original members, I mean, comparatively speaking, hooked onto this program and latched onto it, and I got it. What's the difference? Why is it today that it's almost a miracle if you get to 5 years? Why is there such a difference? What's the difference there?
Culture, community, simplicity. I think things were simpler, and I think community kept them alive, and the culture is way different than it is today. I think there's a lot of external things that are not the same as they once were. And I think like if you started looking at, which I think is probably impossible, but if you look at, because you're dealing with you can't take, just because there's like 100 people that did make it, you can't assume that's going to be the same. Those numbers are going to be the same across the board. That's a skewed perspective. And so like, you can't say that's going to be the standard. So just because there's 1,000 people, 999 get sober and stay sober. When you deal with a larger population, then you're going to start seeing the real statistics. And I really believe that there was a boom, as I mentioned with Bill, and people wanted to be part of that. And that alone probably kept a lot of guys sober, being part of the culture and the community as things started really skyrocketing in that world. And I'm only speculating, but I'm just saying as far as today's way different, and the numbers say so. So that's why I'm addressing it the way I'm addressing it. And I think it needs like a forward-thinking, harsh reality check. So it doesn't even, the last thing I want to do is stagnate somebody, but I certainly want to like let you know that the chips haven't been laid yet. Like, you don't know who you are. That's why half the people start signing up for becoming counselors, because they have no sense of who they really are. They haven't lived with sobriety long enough to figure out and put the pieces together of like, okay, what's this going to look like? What's going to be my purpose, my mission, my life, my journey? And am I even going to stay sober during it? And for me, like, there's so many reasons why I remain sober, because the return on investment and who I got to really see who I really was when the chips were down.
Yeah, I think it has to have something to do with giving it away. And like, because when, like, for example, I'll just go back to the fellow last night, like he's 9 months and he's doing a lot to give it away, and you can see it. And it's like, and I think we continue on that vein. I mean, they continue to share our inspiration, really.
Right.
And continue to share our inspiration. It does two things. It inspires us to continue, and it inspires those around us to continue. And so I think that's a real important part of it. And I guess there's no certainly, I don't think there's any simple solution or simple answer, but I know for me, if I've done this thing one day at a time, and I just kept to that, asked for help every day, thank the power of my misunderstanding every day, and I just do that on a daily basis, and here we are. It's worked, apparently. And 27 years later, it's okay, it's good. And so that's the only message that we can convey is what's worked for us, because that's the only experience we really have. And I know that I listen a lot better to people telling me, and I think Bill experienced this in his journey, that when he shares his story, it tends to inspire people at a different level than when he tells people what to do.
Right.
We can tell people what to do, but if I tell people what to do, I think I'm not going to hit them hit them between the eyes or hit them in the heart. If I tell them what I did and share my experience, strength, and hope that way, I'm more likely to make a connection and to be heard. So I mean, that's my focus is always trying to focus on sharing my experience, strength, and hope as opposed to telling people what to do. Because really, you know, what the hell do I know? Really, tell them what about you? Why? What do I know about you?
That,
I
that
know about me.
that's a great point, and I think there's a lot of logic and truth in that. And I just feel like I've grown enough as a man where I'm willing to put a stake in the ground and say this is where I stand. And so my inspiration comes from from the truth. And so I just think I'm looking at it as far as very retrospectively, and also my experience combined with my knowledge today, with putting a stake in the ground and saying this is the truth. And you need to look at it, and you need to be goddamn aware of what I'm saying to be the reality. And I'm not just making it up. So like, unless there's like certain clusters of program that I'm not unaware of, there's a huge percentage of you that are not going to make it. And why is that? And I'm telling you, it's because you don't know who you are. And until when shit hits the fan and life really happens and you figure out who you really are and who you really aren't, and then you make the call at that point to stay sober.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you.
And you know what? Yeah. And
you
you know what else? And you know what else? You might need some outside help to find out who you really are. And I think that's one of the things I got from the reading today. And I think we're going to have a little anecdote. I'm going to share a little anecdote. Right? We're going to do that once in a while. And today I was going to share the little anecdote, and I know it might be kind of relevant to what we're talking about. This one, like, I want to talk about a guy that who I sponsored in early recovery. Let's just, for the sake of whatever, just call him. Let's call him Fred. So Fred had a little bit of sobriety. He had a few months, and this guy was a musician, and he started playing with a band. So Fred called me one night, and he said, Joe, I have something to tell you. And he said, I think you're going to be a little bit jealous, but he said, I found out that I realized that I'm a social drinker, and I feel bad telling you because I know you're not. And but I realized that I'm a social drinker because I'm playing with my band here at this bar, and I'm able to have a beer, and it's not affecting me at all. Just have one beer, and that's it. And I go back to maybe two a night. That's it. And I said to him, well, first of all, I'm not jealous in any way, because there's nothing that alcohol brings to the table that I miss anymore. Matter of fact, I'm quite happy with the fact that I don't have to drink anymore, and I'm really good at where I'm at, and I'm glad that I don't drink at all. Even if I could drink, I wouldn't. So trust me, there's no I'm not jealous in any way, shape, or form. But I just want to let you know, just a reminder to you, that whenever you've drank before, it's pretty much taking you back to your drug of choice. And he said, and he had made some kind of excuse about that, and said that no, he's good. He's just really enjoying it. It's enjoyable to have a beer with the guys and the people and who are there at the bar, and he's good. And I said, okay, well, there you go. All right, thank you. Okay, whatever. And then so anyway, a couple months later, I got a call from this guy, and he had lost his wife, his house, and everything, because he got back into the crack, and was writing checks with his wife's checkbook, and they couldn't pay the mortgage, and so he lost his wife left, and his house was gone. And it was only, like, I'm telling you, 2, maybe 3 months, and this is what happened.
Right.
And so that was my anecdote, because I remembered this guy, and I remembered, and I never did hear back from him again. I did. I think he was clean for a while. as a result of going to the church after that. But I didn't see him around the program recovery, the rooms of recovery rooms anymore. And I honestly don't know what happened to him. Hope he's okay. Hope he things worked out for him. But you know, I just reminded me of how fast and how insidious and how, you know, how that liar works on you. And just you know, this idea that somehow it's a great thing that I can have one beer, and how much fun it is, and how great it is, and how it's like his, you know, and how quickly that turns into boom, everything's gone. Everything's gone.
That's a terrible story.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
In a funny way. I mean, like, because I was really anticipating like a wonderful ending to that.
Yeah. I know. Yeah,
I thought you were only in the middle.
I know the anecdotes aren't always happy endings. Remember I told you about, you know, my first sponsor who died of an overdose, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't always have happy endings, right? That's life. That's the truth.
So why did you want to share that story?
Only because I think it was. I think I wanted to share the story to outline, to, you know, the insidiousness of the disease, and how the liar works on our head, and how our brain is so affected by this disease and the lies that it tells us, and how and I guess, you know, there's other things there, like, you know, this idea that, you know, because I have a drug of choice or a drink of choice, that you know, that's my problem, and the other things aren't my problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's you know, different levels of stuff you can take out of that, or take nothing out of it. It doesn't matter. It's just today's anecdote.
No, for sure. But I certainly wasn't anticipating, and then he came back, and then.
Yeah. No. Maybe. You can always make up your own ending there.
Yeah.
I've just never seen or heard from him since, so I don't know.
So what's the title of this podcast then?
5 years or bust.
AA is a cult.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
No, I just have a final thought. Go ahead.
Inspiration versus inspiration. Just inspiration. Maybe that'd be it.
I think my final thought is, I won't go on long. I like to put emphasis on some of the stark realities, as even like your anecdote is, as far as the disease is concerned. Mm-hmm. But I really believe there's just food for thought in saying, and you know, it would be great if more people would comment on my logic, because I would really love to get into it further, and even like expand on it next week. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, but just on the element of like, there's a choice to get sober initially, and it's kind of almost like induced, whether it's because it's based out of desperation and a lack of understanding of anything, and so you just end up you get tossed into the rooms of AA, and then AA literally saves you in many cases, right? And that's such a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful thing that kid has 9 months, and that he's getting up and sharing his story. I'm not taking away from that. All I'm adding to that, I'm just adding, I'm building off of it. And the stark reality is, will you make it to 5 years? And if you don't make it to 5 years, I really believe I can pinpoint it at, you start figuring out that you need to recommit. You need to recommit to saying like, okay, now I know who I am, who I'm not. And now I know which direction I'm going. Am I going to continue to stay sober? Is this the life I want? And that's, I think, something that doesn't get really thrown around that often because it's like initially, like you're saying, okay, he busted his ass really hard in the first 9 months. He got to where he is from doing that work. Absolutely. It's going to, there's going to be the decision again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And that like, and I believe a lot of that weight of like, when I look in the mirror and go, Tyler, I'm going to stay sober today. I'm like, yes, absolutely. And with the help of a lot of different powers and influencers and supporters and mentors and sponsor, I'm going to stay sober today. But that's a decision you got to make again and again and again. And I just think that there's so much emphasis on shit really starts happening in life, you know, in between those in between years, particularly. That's all. They'll happen later. They'll happen earlier, but they're going to happen. And then you need to reevaluate where you're at and then say, no, I'm all in still. I'm still all in. And that's your call, because you're not under the influence of like old behaviors, old patterns, old, even the habitual behaviors. Like you've broken a lot of them, maybe not all of them, but a lot. And you've changed a lot of your ways, and then you still got to make that decision. And that's where I think most people fail. And that's just the emphasis I'm putting on. It's like, you can have a good run for a while, for sure. It's just like, yeah, like life is grand. And then what happens when shit hits the fan and the chips fall and you find out who you really are, and then you have to make the call is, am I the kind of person that's going to stay sober or not?
Or find out who I really am, or think I found out who I really am, and decide that I don't need recovery anymore.
Right. Of course.
Whatever happens, yeah.
And you fall off the face of the planet. And I just feel like I've seen that so many times. And so they've been huge teachers for me. Those kind of experiences and interactions with those kinds of people are, there's nothing wrong with those people. I'm not the kind of person to say like, they're in living hell or not. I don't know. All I know is that my return on investment is too sacred today to go think, oh, I'm going to go out and party, or go for a couple drinks, or go do like different things that haven't worked for me, that don't work for me. I'm just not willing to risk it. I don't want to. And it's not, so that's not even the question anymore. It's like, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? No, it's like, my life is so good in this way because of the way I'm living. I'm going to continue doing that. So I don't question that anymore. I already have the evidence. I already have exhibit A, B, and C.
Right. Yeah. So in my journey to find out who I am, the one thing that I always have to remember is that I'm an alcoholic or addict. Right. That's one thing I can't, you know, I can't forget.
Well, you got to make that call. The individual's got to make that call. And like I said, a lot of them go, nah, like your guy. No, I'm good. I don't want to live this way. I'd rather lose everything.
No, because it's quite a lot of fun having a beer. It's quite a lot of fun. And that's what the liar will tell you, right? I mean, a liar told me that there's no way I was going to have fun without it. So anyway, let's wrap it up with the serenity prayer. Ready?
Yep.
God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and wisdom to know the difference. Okay.
I think I might call it Joe's happy story. Joe's
inspirational story.
Yeah, I think that's a good one.
Okay. I love you, son.
Yeah, I love you too, Pop.
Have a great day.
Okay, bye.
Well, tomorrow. Bye.